At this time, we'll call the CAC on February 7th. Call the meeting to order. If we'll have a roll, please.
Manuel Cunha,
Yes.
Les Clark.
He is in attendance.
Thank you. Laura Brown,
Present.
Donald Harrell, Amy Lopes, Roger Hofstall,
Here.
Here.
Chris Savage, Suzanne Bauer, Derek Williams,
Here.
Casey Austin Tibbetts,
Here.
John Sanders, Kelly Deming,
Here.
Brittany Dyer, Julie Connell,
Here.
Ned Leba,
Good morning, I'm here.
Jamie Agers,
Here.
Mary Fast,
Here.
Orchel Cryer, John Crump, Kalish Morrow,
Here.
Paul Ward, Jose Delgadillo, Ben Cantu, Angela Nguyen, Richard O'Brien,
Here.
Dennis Medeiros.
Here.
Through the chair, we have a quorum.
Thank you very much. First, I want to welcome everybody on all three offices. I hope everybody had a great and safe Christmas and a good New Year to all. Hope everybody did and as well. First thing I want to do is give a few items of protocol for this meeting. Make sure that all of your electronic devices are turned off so that we don't have any interference with the board meetings in either of the three offices. And during each of the items, I will announce the public time to participate on each of those items that pertain to the public to be commented on at that time. And they can be in public or they can be Zoom or by phone. Each agenda item will be announced by the chair, so everybody knows what item we're on. Again, if you are participating by phone, press *9 to raise your hand so that we may recognize if you need to speak, and to prepare to present when you do your name and all those items that are necessary so that the board executive can get the information down of who spoke and where you're from. Again, thank you all for being here, and definitely all the new participants. I know that during the meeting today, there will be two items on the agenda, number 9 and 10, I believe, that are going to be for all of us to ask questions and about Robert's Rules of Order and about what your obligations, or what not obligations, but what part do you play in the CAC of who you're representing. So we'll have a great discussion with that. And I want to thank everybody again for being present. Let's go to item number 3, approval of the minutes from December 6th, about a month and a half ago. So at this time, I will open it up. If there's any items that you had an opportunity to look at the minutes to see if there's any changes, adjustments, please, let's do it at that time. So this time I'll open it up to the board. If there's any items from the main office of changes to the minutes of December 6th.
Through the chair.
Yes, sir, Mr. Williams.
On item number 9,
My comment on the bottom of the page just simply reads, Mr. Williams supported the ozone plan, but addressed the state's pesticide commitment. Let the record please reflect that I came out very strongly against ARB having any type of authority involving DPR regulatory items. And that I also felt that there were a number of other members that had the same feelings. But please let it show that my comments were that that I was in favor of supporting the ozone plan, but with the ARB SIP not being in there, or the part about, but in no way approving the pesticide part or authority of ARB over pesticides. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments from the central office from the board? Okay, let's go to up north. Any comments from the board members on the minutes of December 6th? Any changes or modifications? Hearing none, I will go to the south, to the office in Bakersfield. Any comments from the board on the minutes at that time for changes or?
No comment.
Great, thank you. All right, let's bring it back here to Fresno. Again, I'll come to the board. Any comments? Please, go ahead.
I also made a comment in opposition of what Mr. Williams had said, in support of what he said. So I don't know. I was by Zoom on that day, but I still think it should be a part of the minutes.
Okay. All right, any other comments from any of the board? Okay, let's go to the public at this time. Any public comments in the north on the minutes of dated December 6th?
No public comment here in the north.
Okay, great, thank you. Let's go to the south. Any public comments?
No public
that'll
comment
be-
in the south.
Okay, will that include Zoom and phone or public? Okay, how about here in the central office? Any comments?
No public comments in the central office or on Zoom.
Okay, great. We'll go ahead, being that I have to go ahead and make those changes and approval of that. Let's go ahead and make those changes as both board members have stated. And we'll make that available for our next meeting.
Through the chair, on the one comment from Ms. Fast,
Yes,
as she was on Zoom, she wasn't an actual board member at that meeting. She was a public member. And as these are not verbatim minutes, but action summary minutes, it's the common practice of this body to not include detailed comments on what the public is commenting
said.
on. So we could definitely consider changing that, but that's just the normal practice on that.
Through
Is
the
that
chair,
okay?
through the chair.
yes.
If I can make the suggestion that her comment that she made right now, while it can't be a change on these, will be included in the minutes of today's meeting. So her
Well,
feelings will
yes,
still be made known.
everything that is
Yeah.
being done today from the board is recorded in today's minutes. So that will reflect that versus the December 6th comments being that from the standpoint of the public. Okay, great. All right, so we'll make that and we'll have that available for the next CAC meeting. Okay, great. First, I need to welcome somebody to our meeting. Okay, at this time, let's go to item number 4. Item number 4 is the public comment, in which any of the public can comment on items that are not on the agenda at this time. And there will be a limit of 3 minutes, is that correct, for public comment? Great. So let's go to item number 4. Let's go to the north. Any public comment in the north?
There is no public comment in the north.
Great. Let's move to the south.
No public comment in the south.
Great. Let's move here to the central office. Any public comment?
There's no public comment in person or on Zoom.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. Number 5, item is the chair's comments. The only thing I would like to say to acknowledge to all of the board, all of the members, the new members, as well as those that have been of the CAC, thank you all for being here. I'm glad to see everybody has made it safely through one of the worst things we've had as a country. And we're all here in person. And if we have to extend the diocese a little more, we'll do that. We'll add a piece of wood on the end and one piece over there where Kelly is, if we have to do that. Or where Miss Brown is, we got a space or two, so we'll do that. But again, I'm just very happy to see everybody's here and well and safe, and everybody had a safe Christmas and a good New Year. And it's going to be an exciting year. And I think nobody's going to be bored, especially with the new plan of the new staff that's going to be presenting it. I've offered them some bourbon or something because that's a challenge and a half to take on that new SIP. And again, I want to thank both everybody on the staff that put together the SIP as we move forward into getting it to ARB and the challenges of Region 9 of their dismissal of our plan. So again, thank you all. I want to thank the staff in the north, the staff in the south, and especially the central, all the staff and everything that works at this air district for everything you do for our community, our businesses, and the public, and the welfare of everybody in our rural community. So again, thank you very, very much, all of you. And especially the tech people. I would not want your job. I think I would blow up the system and I wouldn't plug the wrong connection. So thank you for all the stuff you do to keep us all going in the other two offices. All right, let's go to the executive director, who is not here, but in his place, I believe it is going to be, is it Morgan or is it Shiraz, or who do I get?
It's me today.
Okay, Morgan, congratulations.
Yes.
I'll turn it to you.
So good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. Morgan Lambert, one of the Deputy Air Pollution Control Officers here at the district. And I've got just a few updates today, but I'll keep it pretty brief. One, just for, for your own information, in the December meeting, our governing board, who this is an advisory committee to, elected their new officers for next year. So just as for your reference, Supervisor Vito Chiesa from Stanislaus County was elected as the chair of our board for 2023, and Council member Deborah Lewis from Los Banos was elected as vice chair for next year. And so just for your information there. Also very happy to report that the district was once again recognized by the Government Finance Officers Association and was awarded the Certificate of Achievement and Excellence in Financial Reporting for our annual comprehensive financial report. This is their highest form of recognition in governmental accounting and fiscal reporting, and it really recognizes and highlights the district's commitment and our governing board's commitment to meeting the highest principles of government reporting and transparency to the public, as well as excellence in exercising our fiduciary responsibilities. And so this is the ninth straight year that the district has received this award, so it's definitely something that we're proud of. And at the December board meeting, they received and filed that certificate and that award, and just wanted to highlight that for this group here. And then lastly, wanted to note that at the January meeting, our governing board adopted our 2023 legislative platform, which is kind of the document which guides the district's legislative advocacy efforts over the year, both the state and federal level. That, along with in January, the governor's proposed budget that came out, which we're still working to unpack all the issues that are, or the funding that is in that, likely will bring an item back to this group in next month to solicit, to highlight the areas that we're advocating for, as well as to see if the group wants to take any actions to help support bringing funds to the Valley to help support some of our, especially our incentive programs that we have here that are very successful. So with that, I will turn it back to you, Manuel, for any questions.
Great. Thank you very much, Morgan, for that, especially for the award. As many times as this district has gone through audits by famous legislative people in Sacramento, but to get that award and the amount of money that you guys handle, I notice you're very 500 million, 600 million is a lot of money. And for you to be accountable for every bit of that, for all of the projects, tune-ups to fireplaces to farm equipment to you name it. This district does. That's definitely an accolade to all the staff that run that program. And again, congratulations to all of the staff in the district for that award. At this time, I'll bring it back to the board members here in Central. Any comments of what Morgan has presented? Kelly, please.
Yeah, Morgan, are there going to be any legislative trips?
It's kind of early in the year right now. I don't know that we have any planned currently, but it's always a possibility now that kind of everything is back open and running again. So that's definitely something perhaps at the next meeting, if Tom's here, he may be able to address.
Great idea. Any other members? Okay, let's go to the north. Any CAC members, comments or questions of Morgan on his presentation? Okay, hearing none. Let's go to the south. Any questions in the south of board members of Morgan's presentation? I keep looking over the counter. I don't know why. I just think like there's somebody else hiding somewhere. I don't know why I do that, so I apologize. I keep looking over the counter. So let's bring it back here to the public. Any comments from the public of Morgan's presentation here in the Central?
No public comments in the central office or any indication online.
Okay, how about the North office?
No public comment in the north.
Okay, great. Let's go to the South. Any public comment?
No public comment in the south.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. Thank you, Morgan, very much. Let's go to item number 7, the update on the attainment plans and rules. Emily?
Good morning, Mr. Chair and Committee. My name is Emily Nealand, and I'm the Program Manager of our Air Quality Planning team here at the district, and I'm here today to provide you with a brief update on our plan and rule efforts here at the district. First up, for the 2022 ozone plan, the district governing board adopted the plan, which is for the 2015 8-hour ozone standard, at our December governing board hearing, and subsequently following that, the CARB governing board adopted the plan at their January public hearing. The plan will now be transmitted to EPA for their consideration and approval. In regards to contingency measures, the district and CARB are currently developing a contingency fit package to be taken to our respective boards, and we're aiming for early 2023, and this is pending new guidance from EPA. For our regulatory efforts, the district is continuing the rule development process for our leak detection and repair rules, which are rules 4401, 4409, 4455, 4623, and 4624. So we're continuing the public process on that effort and coordinating with CARB and affected stakeholders, and we do plan to schedule an additional public workshop here in the coming weeks. We've also kicked off the rule development process for Rule 4402, which is our rule for crude oil production sumps, with a scoping meeting that we had in December. And we're evaluating opportunities for a potentially more stringent definition of clean produced water, consistent with our AB 617 BART evaluation and with commitments in the 2022 ozone plan. We're also continuing our process for Rule 4550, which is our rule for conservation management practices, consistent with commitments in the 2018 PM 2.5 plan, to evaluate opportunities to reduce emissions from fallowed land and to also identify opportunities to promote the selection of conservation tillage as a CMP. And then lastly, on our rule development efforts, we're continuing the process for our NSR rule, which is Rule 2201, as well as amendments to Rule 1020, which is our definitions rule, and Rule 2301, which is our rule for emission reduction credit banking. And we have scheduled a public workshop on February 15th to continue that public process. And I'll just mention that Brian Clements, our director of our permits department, will be providing a more detailed update on that rule development process later today. And then also I'll mention that John Klassen, my director, will be providing an update on our PM 2.5 planning efforts as well. So a little bit more detail to come. And with that, I'll open up for any comments or questions. That's a lot of information.
Okay, at this time, bring it back here to the board. Any comments of Emily on Kelly, please?
Yes, Emily, do you have any workshop dates in mind for the CMP?
We currently don't have anything specifically scheduled, but you can get updates on that effort if you sign up for our email listserv. But we don't have a specific time frame specifically just decided on at this point.
Okay, any other comments from board members? Mr. Williams?
Just one. So I heard you mention 22. Did I hear you say a 23, a Rule 2301 also? Or just 2201?
So also 2301. So our permits department is working on kind of a group rule development effort, which includes our NSR rule, which is 2201, the definitions rule 1020, and then rule 2301, which is our rule for emissions reduction credit banking.
I was just looking for that in here. Is it 2301 in here?
Yes, it is.
Page 4, thank you. Oh, it's in that big paragraph
Yes.
under 2201?
Yeah. you'll see
Yeah,
it.
all three are encompassed in
Okay,
that.
thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. There it is. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
No problem.
Line 2.
Great, thank you. Let me go to the south, to the north, excuse me. Any board member comments at this time to Emily? Hearing none, let's go to the south. Any board comments at this time in the south?
Chairman, this is Les Clark down in the south. I've got a couple comments, but as she has stated, there'll be workshops that I'll reserve those. But I am concerned about, several of the rules, because this is, like I've said before, this is one of those final nails in our coffin as far as staying in business. Of course, we're going to be very.
Excuse me, we can't hear you, Mr. Clark.
That's not my
Okay.
fault.
Les, is your mic on?
Yeah,
Okay.
you Fresno people, you can't hear anything.
Well, the first place, Mr. Clark, I'm glad there's an interruption. Welcome back. You look great. You absolutely are still the same Les Clark as we know we've been hearing over the past 35 years, 40 years. So welcome back. Thank you for being in person. And please continue and just speak a little closer, maybe less to the thing for the folks in the north.
Okay, thank you, Manny.
Yeah, that's
Glad to be
perfect.
back. There's about 6 or 7 days there. I don't remember anything, especially the air district. I'm teasing you. But I don't know if you heard my first part of my statement, but she's already said that we're going to have some workshops. But my comment was that there's about 3 or 4 of those rules that we have some real concerns. As I stated earlier, that these are sort of final nail in some of my members, in the proverbial coffin. I'm concerned about the NSR rule. One of the questions, new source review rule, what new? That's one of my biggest concerns, what new? And I know it's major modifications also involved in there, but we'll be keeping an eye on that. And ERCs is our future, emission reduction credits. With regards to the referred to as sump guidelines, I'm not sure, are you thinking it's a sump or is it referred to as a pond? That's one of the simple questions I'll be asking as I got 2 or 3 meetings this month to discuss all these issues. So, but to say that everything's fine, I'm here to tell you it's not fine. So whatever is going forward will be there, and I represent a lot of the little mom and pops. I don't represent the majors, although we work together on a lot of different issues. But my guys are the small guys, and whatever you decide that you're going to put before us, has a tremendous impact on us, our ability to stay in business. And when I say mom and pop, that's what I mean. So those are my comments. I don't know if there's a direct question. She might want to wrap up on is it a pond or is it a sump?
Emily, can you or Morgan respond to that, or John, any one of the three of you, or?
Yeah, let's, I mean, what we're looking at right now is mainly the definition of clean produced water, which, affects mainly, what is a pond, what's allowable in a pond. As part of the BARC review that we did, we concluded that the portions of that rule that regulate sumps, we think we meet BARC on. So really the only remaining issue is this definition of clean produced water.
Okay, well, did you, well, I don't want to belabor it, but I'll talk about it later when we have a meeting to talk more specifics. But, there's a lot of things that went into the sump regulation. First stage, second stage, third stage. So, I'll be interested in see how the district is responding to that. Thank you, Morgan.
Okay, any other comments from CAC members in the South? I think it's just Les down there. Okay, all right. Let's bring it back here. Is there any other comments? Any other comments from board members here? If not, are we okay? Okay. Let's open it to the public at this time in the north. Any comments from the public in the north?
There are no public comments in the north.
Okay. And when I ask that question, it'll be including Zoom and or phone or anything, correct? Okay, great. All right, let's go to the south. Any public comments in the south?
No public comments in the south.
Okay, how about the north? I mean, the central, excuse me. Any public comments?
There are no public comments in the central office.
Okay, I think Emily and Morgan and the staff, I think this is going to be a challenging SIP for what Les is describing, of what is left of the small, just like the small farmer, of what's going to happen to him during Sigma on the west side or the east side, of what's going to happen with the farming opportunities or whatever we're doing. So I do appreciate that we have these workshops and trying to clarify those issues like Mr. Clark has brought up, and making sure we don't allow some definitions that really suddenly come off the wall that really weren't supposed to be what they were. So I appreciate the staff working and with all of the different industries, as well as on the environmental side, but definitely to keep jobs in our rural communities. Okay. Anybody else? Okay, let's go to item number 8, ARB. And who at ARB will be doing the presentation? Do we have that? Is there someone on?
I believe it's Laura Carr.
Is it Laura? Laura, are you on the line?
Hi, good morning, Mr. Chair. This is Laura Carr with the California Air Resources Board. Sorry, I apologize for the delay. It always takes me a minute to join the Zoom as a panelist there. But today I'll be providing the brief update that we have on actions that the CARB board took at our public meeting on January 26th and January 27th. So this was a hearing that was actually held down in Riverside. And actually, Emily alluded to the first item that I wanted to talk about, which is the approval of the San Joaquin Valley 70 ppb ozone SIP. So the CARB board adopted the 2022 ozone plan, which the district governing board had approved back in December 2022. Also want to note that the CARB staff report, along with the 2022 ozone plan, included the commitment, the state commitment from CARB to achieve aggregate emission reductions in the attainment year of 2037. So that was contained within the CARB staff report. Those commitments for reductions are coming from measures adopted in the 2022 state SIP strategy. And the ozone plan itself and the relevant portion of the CARB staff report are going to be submitted to US EPA as a revision to the California SIP. The next item that we had was to hear proposed research projects for fiscal year 23-24, and the board approved the proposed research projects and also delegated approval of the individual research contracts for those fiscal years, for fiscal years 23-24 and 24-25 to the CARB executive officer. The research budget here is about $6 million, and it's anticipated to fund 11 different projects. And those projects will identify and prioritize strategies that have health, environmental, and economic co-benefits, create additional health endpoints to assess our programs, leverage new tools and methods to identify and refine mitigation strategies to support air quality goals, focus on issues that are unique to California and priority populations and communities, and also support the board's decision-making and effective program implementation. Since it was our January hearing, we also had our annual update or report from our CARB executive officer on program priorities for 2023. So the board heard that overview, and the presentation outlined some of the key activities that CARB is planning to undertake in 2023 to achieve air quality, carbon neutrality, and environmental justice goals. And the executive officer highlighted some of the key regulations that will be coming before the CARB board in 2023, including the Advanced Clean Fleets Rule and the in-use locomotive regulation. And our long-range clean air and climate plan efforts will be continuing into 2023, including additional steps to meet federal air quality requirements, implementation of the scoping plan, and finalization of the Community Air Protection Program Blueprint 2.0. The last item here was actually heard on the second day. This was a 2-day board meeting. And this was the meeting to consider the proposed amendments to the airborne toxic control measure for chromium electroplating and chromic acid anodizing operations. So this is actually the first of 2 board hearings on this item, and the board heard and discussed the proposed amendments to the airborne toxic control measure, or the ATCM, which would eliminate toxic hexavalent chromium emissions from chrome plating operations. The proposed amendments will cover 2 different types of chrome plating facilities. The first is decorative chrome plating facilities, and the second is functional chrome plating facilities, which include both hard chrome plating and chromic acid anodizing facilities. With over 70% of the chrome plating facilities in the state located in overburdened and disadvantaged communities, the proposed amendments would reduce the cumulative risk burden experienced and the potential health impacts of exposure to sensitive receptors and communities located near chrome plating facilities. The proposed amendments will include separate phase-out dates for decorative chrome plating and for functional chrome plating, with the goal of eventually fully eliminating toxic hexavalent chromium emissions from chrome plating operations in California. And then at the hearing, the board also directed staff to further explore the impacts of the varying proposed implementation timelines for decorative plating operations. So that's all the updates that I have right now. I'm happy to take any comments or questions. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Laura. Appreciate it. Let me bring it here to the Fresno CAC members. Any questions or comments of Ms. Laura Carr? I'll come back. Okay, let's go to the north. Any comments of the CAC members in the north? Hearing none. Let's go to the south. Any comments in the south from the CAC members? I hear none. Let me go back to the north. Was there a comment, Mr. Liebran? Did you raise your hand or? I guess there is no comment. Okay, all right. Let me bring it back to the Fresno before going to the public. Any CAC members have any questions of Ms. Carr? Okay, then let's go to the public in the north. Any comments?
No public comment in the north.
Let's go to the south. Any public comments in the south?
No public comment in the south.
Great, thank you. Let's bring it back here to the central office. Any public comment at this time?
There's no public comment in the central office.
Ms. Carr, I have a question for you. During the 2 board meetings, being that the year 2023 all of the Tier 3 trucks, 2009, 10, are not going to be re-registered with DMV because they have run out. Was there any discussion on how they're going to handle that situation for many of these independent truckers that aren't going to be able to go buy electrics that are 500,000 or 600,000, and it'll take a year to 2 years before you could even get one, and even the backlog of used 2011 and newer trucks. Was there any discussion at all by the board or by the chair or any of the executive team about what we're going to do over the next 6, 7, 8 months when 320,000 trucks will not get their DMV license, and San Joaquin is about 16,000? Was there any discussions about that?
Mr. Chair, thank you for the question. So that regulation wasn't on the agenda for either of the 2 days of the January hearing. So as far as I know, to the best of my knowledge, that was not a topic of discussion at the hearing.
Okay. Well, I would hope that the board and the executive team will realize that we have many independent truckers that live in our rural communities. That is their only job, to provide for their families, is that truck. And if we don't have trucks for them available, then how can we tell them to drop the truck and go on unemployment or go try to find another job when that's all they've done their life for 10, 15, 20 years? I am disappointed as an individual for my rural communities to be hurt from that basis and not have the opportunity to have a job. And yet we don't have a worry about that. And if it was Los Angeles or San Francisco, it may be a different story. But being that it's Shafter, Mendota, Orosi, Fireball, we don't worry about those folks. But yet they feed the world. And I'm just disappointed. I really am, that something so important as that for these communities, when we don't even have available resources, electric or even new trucks, are out for a year and a half. I'm just greatly concerned that we don't worry about people, and we just worry about other things that have no relevance to what is going on in our rural communities. And I know it's not your job, but if you would please forward at least my personal sentiments, that I am deeply disappointed in how we take care of our rural communities. And even with EJAG and or 617, those are for rural communities. We seem to have that out there, but it doesn't seem to be doing what it's supposed to do. So thank you again very much for your presentation. We will go to, if there's not any other comments, we will move on to item number 9. And that has been in the workings. And again, I'm glad we have in our 3 locations, great attendance. And Anita, please, I will turn it over to you and to Mr. Morgan. Both of you are going to be involved in this. But again, on item number 9, the overview of the meeting rules referring to Robert's Rules of Order, parliamentary procedure. For some of us, remember that in high school FFA and Future Farmers of America, just in case somebody didn't know what that is. But again, Anita, please go forward, and I think we will be we'll be very pleased to hear what you have to say.
Okay, well, thank you. I appreciated the chair's invitation, the ability to come in here and just go over a refresher. Some of you, it sounds like, have a history of knowledge with Robert's Rules of Order and parliamentary procedure. My experience with it doesn't go back quite that far, since my tenure at the district about 10 years ago. I'm Annette Balatori. I'm the district counsel here at the district. And I just want to, again, the chair invited me to come in and just go over some basics, a few little tips and tricks and reminders to enable this body, this very important body at the district, to conduct an effective meeting. So according to the district formation agreement, the purpose of the Citizens Advisory Committee, which was formed pursuant to statute, and the district's formation agreement, is to receive public comments related to the actions and decisions by the district. And so by governing board resolution, the chair of the CAC is to conduct these meetings under Robert's Rules of Order. The purpose of Robert's Rules is to conduct business at meetings in an orderly and productive fashion while promoting a deliberative process of full and free discussion. Robert's Rules, if followed, are a very effective and powerful tool to enable the protection of each member's rights as it relates to your individual and collective participation in this body. The rules provide a shield to protect each member's rights, as well as a sword to enable each member to champion their own interests. And so your goal as a member of this body is to uphold the objectives of your organization and to protect the rights of your organization's members. So there are two primary roles, the role of the presiding officer and the role of the members. The role of the presiding officer, the rules are to be implemented through the chair. And so the chair does this by calling the meeting to order, by adhering to the agenda, by recognizing members to speak, and thus for members to wait to be recognized to speak, to moderate the discussion in a way that gives each member who wants to deliberate the opportunity to do so, to enforce the observance of order and decorum, and to ensure that the will of the board, and not of individual members, is carried out. And now what is the role of members? There are certain protocols of board facilitation or board deliberation. First, only one person should speak at a time. Even if discussion is heated, it is necessary for maintaining proper decorum that only one person speak at a time. Second, a speaker must be recognized by the chair before speaking. So if you haven't been called upon, you just be quiet. Number three, a speaker may not speak again on a particular item until all others wishing to speak are called upon first. And this is for the chair largely to moderate, but your goal should be to support the chair's efforts to guarantee speaker rights by following this protocol. Number four, all comments are made through the chair. The purpose of the body is not to debate with each other, it's to deliberate as a body. Therefore, all comments should be addressed to the chair and avoiding all personal comments. You should never be alluding to other members by name where possible to avoid it, nor alluding to the possible motives of members. Number five, comments are confined to the current issue or subject at hand. The immediately pending question is the only topic that should be discussed. And for that reason, it's very important for the chair to follow the agenda to ensure that the correct topic is being discussed at any one given time. Number six, members have no right to complain. They only have the right to discuss or deliberate in a relevant way and to make motions. Number seven, there should be no cross conversations or interruptions. Members should not be speaking openly to one another or across the dais towards other members. Number eight, no criticism or discussion that is personal to other members And this includes praise and compliments as well as criticism. You can express agreement or disagreement with ideas or opinions, but you should avoid making differences of opinion personal. And finally, all rules of order must be respected and obeyed. Okay, now I want to go over just a few simple techniques, basic techniques. The first being how to handle emotion. And we all, I know in the course of our deliberations, it seems intuitive, but let's just kind of break it down to make sure that, going forward, especially when discussions can get heated, or there may be many differences of opinion, that the motion itself is clearly and properly put forth. So there are 6 steps. A main motion is brought before the assembly after an agenda item is called upon by the chair. Any member, upon being recognized, of course, by the chair, can speak to the question, including making a motion on the question or issue being discussed. Once the motion is made, it must be seconded. And the reason for this is that we don't want motions going forward where only one member of the body is in favor of the motion. Having a second at least provides some assurance that there's some collaboration or more than one person is in favor of moving forward on this motion. So once it's seconded, the chair should recognize the motion and the second, and then restate the motion for clarity, which helps the clerk who's taking the minutes. If the chair's statement of the motion is not what the maker of the motion intended, this is the time to ask to be recognized and to correct or clarify the chair's statement of the motion. Finally, the main motion is considered by the assembly. The chair must allow debate of the motion before it can be put to a vote. And again, each member may only have one opportunity to speak until all other members wishing to speak have a turn. 5, once the chair closes debate on a motion, the chair puts the motion to a vote, assuming there has been no motion to amend the vote, which I will talk about next. Following the vote, the chair should announce the result of the vote. For example, motion passes, motion is adopted, motion fails, and then immediately moves on to the next item of business. Once the chair announces the vote, there is no more discussion about that item, no more stray or extraneous comments. It is done. On to the next item. Okay, amending a motion. Amending a motion occurs before a main motion is voted on. A main motion takes place and is debated or deliberated, and a member may, upon being recognized by the chair, move to revise that motion. So, for example, a main motion, I move that the draft goals and objectives for 2022 be adopted. You, as a member, prefer a revision to this draft document. And so you say, I move to amend the motion by revising the goals and objectives to include X, Y, and Z, whatever, striking out particular language from the original motion, and adding additional language to the original motion. Again, the motion must be seconded to prevent moving forward on motions that only one person favors. And then the motion to amend is voted on. If the amendment is adopted, then the chair directs return to the main motion, and then the main motion as amended is then continued to be deliberated and voted upon by the board. And now I just want to go over a few other useful little techniques that may come in handy. And Robert's rules, if you're familiar with them, is a pretty, it's not thick, but there's a lot of detail in Robert's Rules of Order. I guess it depends on how big the print is and the publication. I have one that's this thick and the print's very, very tiny. But a lot of it is pretty technical and detailed, and really isn't, wouldn't come up in the ordinary course of this body's meetings. But a couple other little useful techniques that I thought might be worth bringing up here for you today is one, a motion to postpone. So this can come in handy to allow an agenda item to be postponed to the next meeting. For example, if you believe the board needs more time to obtain information in order to make an intelligent decision, if a board member you know will vote your way is absent from the meeting, you can move to postpone to the next meeting, but not beyond that time, only to the very next meeting. This is a motion, just like all other motions. It requires a motion and a second. It can be amended in the same way that a main motion can be amended. Requires a second debate and a majority vote. But that's something that you might want to consider for the future. Another useful technique is requesting a point of order. It's one of those rare times where you actually can interrupt the speaker if you believe a rule of order has been violated. So without waiting to be recognized, you may call out point of order, and the chair listens to the complaint that you have, and the chair is the ruler, rules whether there is a violation, such as point well taken, point not well taken. If the member who asked for the point of order, or any other member for that matter, disagrees with the chair's ruling, the member may call out, "I appeal from the decision of the chair." If appealed, the chair explains the reason for the chair's ruling. Each member who wishes may debate once on that appeal of the chair's ruling. The chair speaks a second time, giving a closing statement as to, trying to justify the chair's ruling. And then a vote is taken on whether the chair's decisions shall be sustained. And only a majority vote of the negative will overturn the ruling of the chair. And so that's all I really intended to cover today. There are many other types of motions available within Robert's Rules of Order, as I mentioned, that are less common, but are included in there. And I would encourage all of you to, get yourself a copy of Robert's Rules, or it's pretty accessible online. You can purchase a copy off of Amazon. Also, the California Special District Association website has a quick reference guide on parliamentary procedure that is pretty handy. But the more knowledgeable you are on Robert's Rules, the more effective you can be in both protecting your rights as a member, as well as advocating for your interests and motives as a member of the CAC. And so that's all I have to share with you today. I hope you found this presentation somewhat interesting, and happy to respond to any questions.
Any questions of Anita on this one item called?
I have some questions.
Please.
Are you familiar? First of all, I agree with you that Robert's Rules, when I bought my copy, was about that thick. And basically, practical use on this type of committee or other less formal boards is I think, cumbersome.
Right.
Which you agree with, really,
yes,
to a certain degree.
Definitely.
I did have the opportunity through my first use to come across Rosenberg's Rules of Order. Are you familiar with that at all?
Yes, I am. I'm familiar with it. I couldn't tell you the differences, any key differences between the two, but I know that they're pretty similar, though.
Judge Rosenberg is a Superior Court judge from Yolo County. And basically what he did was he took Robert's Rules and reduced them to practical use for situations similar to ours. And I just want to throw that out there. I know you indicated, and I wasn't aware of that our charter, so as to speak, is to follow Robert's Rules of Order.
That's correct.
But again, there's a practicality aspect of it, and I just wanted to make that point. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other comments from the board here in the central office? All right, let me go to the north comments of Annette from the board members in the north. Hearing none, we'll come back. We're not done yet, I guarantee you. Let's go to the south. My distinguished friend, I cannot mention names, and I've got to behave on that. Mr. Board Member, any comment? He's waving his hands. No. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Clark. Let's bring it back. Let me ask a very needed question, and and I would like to hear from all of you about this. It's been an important issue on boards that I have served, in all type of boards. To provide a copy of Robert's Rules of Order in the simplest form that allows for us not to get in postponed indefinitely. There's a lot of things that we don't do. We're not that type, maybe compared to the Congress that goes, they don't even follow rules. Is that an issue from the executive team of, even with the board, is to provide a copy, a revised copy, whatever that is, to each of you members that are a board member, so that you have that at all times with you, rather than, I mean, yeah, you can pull it up on this, but to have a copy and to make notes. Do any of you have any personal opinions about getting a copy, having it provided to you as a member of this board? So you know, or are you comfortable with you as what was presented? So any comments from anybody? Do you want a copy or not? Are you okay? I mean, those are my questions, because you're taking time out of your schedule. Free.
If I may,
Please.
just from the experience I've had in running meetings, and for 2 years I was mayor of the city of Tulare, and I had to run those meetings. We did have city council that was there that helped guide us, keep us on agenda. I would think one thing we'd have trouble with if we all had our own copy, and maybe you'll agree or disagree, but if we all had our own copy of Robert's Rules, it's so thick and it's so complicated, we'd get bogged down, and we probably wouldn't get the meeting done by noon. We'd go into the afternoon if people started objecting. And that's why, to a certain degree, just as a condensed version of Robert's Rules of Order, if you wanted to go into that type of detail, I'd suggest that you at least review Rosenberg's rules, because it doesn't vary really from Robert's. It summarizes, and it's a good, it's a document that's good as a refresher of what you should do. That's my comment.
Great, thank you. Any other comments? Let me go to the north. Any comments from CAC members? Okay, let's go to the south. Any comments there from that and the discussion about it providing?
I would think that through the chair, I would think that the main thing about this is, I've been on several boards, I mean, school boards and everything else, but common sense also permeates through this system. I mean, motion, second, and those type of deals, and all the others follows. But I mean, if you're going to get bogged down on the details of Robert's Rules of Order, I tell you, I even got away from that when I was a college president. No, I'd still be in college, and they wouldn't want me there. So, I appreciate the counselor's advice, but the common sense will prevail.
Thank you, Mr. Clark. Annette, any comment, or we have you here, and between, you can keep us in line. If we're straying, you come over and tap us on the shoulder and tell us to get our act together and get back in line.
Well, I think I agree with both Mr. Clark and Mr. Medeiros that it's less is more, especially with this body when it comes to Robert's Rules of Order. That's why my goal here was just to give a kind of a high level overview of just some basic techniques and rules that would commonly come across this body. There are, if you Google Robert's Rules, there's little cheat sheets out there and things that, if something like that would be useful to you, I would encourage you to try to look up something like that and use it as a handy reference, or just read it before each meeting, just kind of as a quick reminder. But otherwise, yeah, it should be pretty simple for these folks, for you folks.
Okay, great. Yes, Mr. Williams.
So, since we're probably precluded from looking at other, for example, like my colleague down the way here from Tulare was saying, if we can't look at other alternatives, I thought this was fine for what we're trying to do. I'd actually, and I maybe our deputy APCO can tell me, even after all the years I've been on EJAG, I'm not sure if we're under Robert's Rules of Order in our bylaws. Then I would love to have this passed out to all of the members of EJAG at the next meeting. Maybe the same presentation would actually be really, really good, if that's possible. This is maybe not the place I can ask for that, but well, I guess I can, because the CAC does have a little bit of comments to make on that.
So EJAG is subject to Robert's rules, and we actually did this presentation at EJAG a couple of months ago. That's why Manuel
didn't remember
asked
it being this thorough for some reason.
It was.
Yeah.
It was pretty much the same presentation,
Okay,
and the slides,
well,
the
when you give me my
PowerPoint
age,
slides are on the
I can't remember
website.
last month, so it's okay.
Careful. The age group is still young. We're still,
Probably saying that because you got a year on me.
Still young. There's no older person here. No way. Any other comments? Oh, yes, please.
Yeah, I would just concur that Rosenberg's is a really good, just general overview. I know in our city, we just have the little tiny packet. It takes a coffee break basically to go through the whole thing. It's so condensed, and it even gets into substitute motions and those sorts of things too. So a little bit more even than what's right here too. But otherwise, I bought a condensed version too of Robert's. I've got the thick one, but then I got the condensed one, and that's still multiple pages long. But Rosenberg's is great.
Great. Okay. Let's go to the public. So just in case there's some question about how the public, is there any comment from the public in the north?
No public comment in the north.
Great. Let's go to the south. Any public comment?
No public comment in the south.
Great. Let's bring it back here for public comment.
No public comment in the central office.
Great. Thank you very, very much. Appreciate it. And you'll be there, so if we make mistakes, you can throw something at us or something, okay? Thank you again very, very much. Okay, let's go to item number 10, excuse me. And that is, what are we doing on this committee? What do we do? How do we perform? And what's our obligation sort of like? Or why are we here, and why do we want to be here? And I hope, Morgan, that's going to be your job. And so I'm going to turn it over to you and let you run with this one.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chair. So just as with a number of new committee members, and I think starting off a new year, the chair wanted to at least have a couple of items to kind of as a refresher for how the meeting operates, and also like what the purpose of the group is. And so I'll spend just a few minutes. There was a item that was included in your guys' packet that should have most of the stuff I'm going to talk about here. So just for your reference. So the Citizens Advisory Committee is something that's statutorily created. It's part of the California Health and Safety Code, and it was established when the Unified Air District was created back in the early 90s. That is it's a pretty vague statement that just says the district shall have a Citizens Advisory Committee. And so from that, in 1992, the district's governing board adopted a resolution that formally established the CAC, as well as established the structure of the CAC and kind of the charge of the CAC. And so that's what I'll be talking about here a little bit. And since the creation of the CAC, it's really been invaluable in relaying information to Valley residents as businesses, and in providing district staff and the governing board with important advice and critical issues, and being really a sounding board for some of the actions that the board has taken. So at a high level, it is an advisory body. It doesn't take formal actions on adopting district rules or plans or things of that nature, but it does provide advice and guidance as the board and staff consider the actions and plans and rules and otherwise that may be undertaken to advance the compliance with federal air quality standards here in the Valley. It's really one of the main charges is to provide input in the updating and monitoring of the district's rule development procedures. And that's done, we'll often talk about plans and rules that we're working on here. We'll often bring versions of draft rules to the body for their input on before taking it to the governing board, as well as from time to time, depending on the specific rule or nature of the rule, there have been times where the CAC has actually formed subcommittees of members to meet with the district and to look at and review rules. Also, after rules are adopted or plans are adopted, the CAC also provides review and input on how those rules are being implemented or the effectiveness of those rules. And so that comes up from time to time as we bring back reports as different stakeholders that you may engage with have questions or comments or concerns or otherwise. The group will bring these to the district and we'll work through those issues. It's also a forum to generate ideas and develop those ideas into possible approaches to improve air quality in the Valley. And so we look to this group at times, as we bring forward potential ideas that we have. Oftentimes, this group will, add to that, and provide additional ideas on things to look at or to consider. And oftentimes, those develop themselves into either a better document or better plan that we have, or into whole new initiatives that we may be taking on here at the Valley. From time to time, although it's been a little bit since this has happened, but either the governing board or the executive director may task this group with doing some special studies or subjects and looking into some specific areas and then providing recommendations or input on those areas. Another big part of this group is to support and encourage public input into our process. And so, all of you that are here, you represent different interests by just the structure of how the CAC works with members from industry and agriculture, members from the environmental community, and members from the city municipal groups. And part of the role here is to try to use your connections to make sure people are plugged into the processes that we're doing, so that they can participate meaningfully in our workshops and in the different, either here at the CAC or otherwise, as well as if bringing back, things that you hear, back to the district as well. Also, a key role is to facilitate public education on the district's decisions and actions and approaches to clean air. So after the district does take certain actions, either a rule or a plan or otherwise, oftentimes members of this group will help with getting information out. At times we'll bring materials so in a more formal way, but at other times it's through newsletters that you may have as part of your organizations and may send information out, or other groups that you also participate on. We've had times where members have invited us to come and speak at these other groups, either it be a city council, a board of supervisors meeting, an industry organization, an environmental organization, and so we always prioritize that and try to get out and support those efforts as well. We also, the group also is important in encouraging the sharing of information, both amongst CAC members, the executive director, the governing board, and other interested parties in terms of how we go about reducing air pollution in the San Joaquin Valley. They're also, one of the charges is to take responsibility for working with interested parties in their area and coordinating with district staff on aspects of informing the public regarding district action. So as you can see with, several of these bullets, it's really about, how to help engage the public or engage different stakeholder groups and understanding what the district is doing, the impacts of actions that we may be taking, and how to basically plug in and be an active participant and be able to help shape the actions that the district is taking. And then lastly on this group, on this item, is to provide guidance to the executive director as he assesses and approves another group's annual goals and objectives, which is EJAG, the Environmental Justice Advocacy Group. So early on when that group was formed, CAC had a more formal role in kind of overseeing the operation of that group. Since 2015, that reporting structure has changed, and EJAG now reports directly to our governing board. But CAC still plays a role in helping to kind of shape what the annual goals and objectives of that group are, and that's done through the fact that there are 3 members of CAC who are appointed to EJAG, and so they participate with and in the development and of those goals and objectives through the EJAG's process. And so that's really at a high level, kind of what the purpose behind the CAC and what the charge of the CAC is. And so as you participate on meetings, you'll often see, depending on the agenda, several types of items. I mean, a lot of items are informational and discussion items, so that you're aware of what we're doing and can really serve in that effort to help with the public education and outreach. The other side is you'll see at times we bring actual items that we're looking for action on, either to provide specific input on rules or plans, like we had a couple of months ago with the ozone plan, or there may be things like with the ledge platform where CAC may choose to write a letter or otherwise to the state government, the governor, to advocate for funding or other policy positions at the state level in advance of hopefully improving air quality here in the valley. So with that, I'll turn it back over to the group for any questions that you may have.
Appreciate it. Thank you. One item of this goes back to, in which I was just speaking to, is the understanding of the Brown Act. I want to make sure that we also understand that piece of things. So before we leave today, whoever from the staff can speak a little bit, which would be council more than likely, about how does the Brown Act work so we don't get into trouble if we call each other, if we do things or whatever. But if anybody would need to know that, we can certainly have that at the end. Pardon? Page 4. Okay. So I think we need to make sure that we follow that little tidbit, because a lot of people get into trouble because of that. And we don't need to have that activity happening. So, Morgan, thank you again. Let me open it up to the CAC members here. Any questions of Morgan on the duties of what a CAC member does? Anybody? Mr. Williams.
You had to ask since you've had that last bullet on there. So if the guidance or assistance to EJAG in developing goals and objectives, their GNOs, is going to be just the 3 members who have been assigned by this board to that group, then would we actually be able to just eliminate this last item? Because as I read this, we didn't have a quorum at EJAG last session, so their goals and objectives have not been approved yet. But upon approval, the way I read this, they would then come to this group, because maybe this group would want to give some input to the members that they've assigned to the EJAG. So I'm kind of confused on what this group wants, or what the district exactly, how they want it to work.
Yeah, this is well, first off, this is an action of the governing board to put that here, so it wouldn't be something that the CAC would be able to change. I mean, I guess they can make a recommendation to the governing board. But I think the idea here is just that at the end of the day, the goals and objectives of EJAG are not approved by EJAG. They're approved by the district's executive director. Now, they are the EJAG will generally adopt a set of recommended goals and objectives that then the air pollution control officer will consider in finalizing them. And so they have the last year's goals have been finalized by the executive director based on the recommendations that EJAG put forward. As a whole, I don't think at this point in time, now if the CAC would like for a member of EJAG to come and present on what those finalized goals and objectives are and what EJAG is doing, they could definitely ask for that. Because that's still kind of part of the EJAG bylaws, is that they would have not a direct reporting relationship, but a relationship in working with the CAC to make sure CAC is informed of the efforts that EJAG is doing. And at times, there will be, Mr. Williams often provides that role in providing updates on what EJAG is doing when this body wants an update on that. But I think it's good to still have it here, because it still shows that that the board did want CAC to play some role in developing and putting forward what the goals are going to be for EJAG. And like I said, with the 3 members that of the, I guess it's 15 members, I believe, are on EJAG. 3 of those members are CAC members, and so they provide obviously good direction as well as insight into what those goals should be on an annual basis.
Okay, so maybe we could just meet the intent of what we feel the intent of the governing board is. And we don't have to do it on every item from EJAG, or there'd be a ton of stuff that we'd be bearing CAC with. But perhaps then, if these goals and the goals and objectives for this year have been approved by the APCO, a copy should be emailed out to all the members. And if they ever have any questions or concerns, they can reach out to the district, or they can come to an EJAG meeting. But I would suggest we get copies out to all the members. This is kind of how I would read this.
Okay, let me go to the north. Any comments in the north of Mr. Morgan Lambert? Nothing. Okay, let's go to the south in the Bakersfield office. Any comments by the board? Yes, Les.
The points, Morgan's did a good job reporting, and I appreciate him bringing out a couple of points. Facilitate public education of the district decision and actions and approaches to clean air. That's one of the responsibilities of the CAC members, to make sure that that's spread back out into the community, and especially the group that they're representing. The other one that I don't think that most people are doing and following, but take responsibility for working with interested parties in their area and coordinating with the district staff on all aspects of informing the public regarding the district's action. Now, to me, that means, and I've done it in the past, I mean, if you're representing a special group, at a minimum, you should be communicating with that group. And in fact, when I've seen that it's going to have an impact on the whole community, I've actually went to the Chamber of Commerce and told them this is what's going to take place, and whether it's negative or positive or whatever. So I would think that each one of you, you got your little noggin stored full of a lot of information, but you're not doing anything with it but going home. That's not the responsibility of CAC members. You're supposed to spread the gospel, as they say. And as the one on, I'm glad you clarified it, Morgan, because the one provide guidance to, I mean, as far as EJAG wasn't even in existence in 1992. So there's been a lot of discussion and talks over the years concerning EJAG's role, whether it's through the board or whether it's through the CAC. Like I say, there's only 2 of us that went through this whole process, your chairman and myself. And we know a lot of the things that went on. So we're speaking from, I think, an area where that take heed to, the CAC roles and responsibilities. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Clark. All right, let's bring it back here to the main, to the central office. Any other questions of Mr. Morgan Lambert at all on this item? But I will concur with Mr. Clark. That was the objective in 1992 with Mr. McCork, Senator McCorkindale. The CAC was to be the body to go out. That's why we had the 3 categories or areas: environmental, business, and cities. And that was designed so that we could go to various chambers, various women organizations, youth organizations, whatever it is. We were to go there and give that information so they know and they're able to communicate to the people in their communities. That's what these advisory committees are for. And so when we developed this in 1992, some of you weren't born yet. Some of us had a little age on us. But that was the purpose. And we had to have an advisory committee to the board to get that information out there. And that's why we're here. And I think the importance is for us to continue with that effort. Either the chair, the main board member or the alternate, both are to go out there and spread the word of what those issues and things may be, and then bring them back. I think that's the importance. So we all can hear and we can discuss and make things happen to take care of our communities, because we are the ones that are going to take care of the communities. Sometimes our elected officials can't get the information fast enough, but you can because you're in the grassroots. So Les, thank you very much. If hearing no other item on number 10, let's go to, and Morgan, I want to make sure that all of the members in all three offices and the alternates as well as the board members have a gist of understanding what the Brown Act is, okay? Of how many people can communicate with each other on an issue, how many we cannot communicate. That is an issue I think we need to have discussed. We don't have to do it today because we have many items on the agenda, but down the road, I think it would be important to have a little bit on the Brown Act of how it's relevant to this committee and how we can call each other and not call each other to discuss issues or not discuss issues. Because what I don't want, people are volunteering their time. They don't need to be criticized that they violated the Brown Act because we failed to let them know what that rule was or what that process was. They're gracious enough to volunteer and to be a part of it and to be part of their community. I want to make sure they have all the tools and the necessary understanding of things they have to have before them, okay? So we can do that at the next meeting. We don't have to do it today, okay? Let's go to item number 11. John, the small little 2.5 plan that I understand you got a whole closet for it that Samir has developed for you to keep all the documents. So please go ahead.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. I'm John Klassen, Director of Air Quality Science and Planning, and I'll be providing an update this morning on where we are with PM 2.5 planning for the San Joaquin Valley. So a little bit of background here on air quality standards. For those of you who have not followed this closely, the Clean Air Act prompts the Environmental Protection Agency to establish health-based ambient air quality standards for a number of pollutants. The table on the right-hand side gives an example of some of the key standards that we are tracking and working on attaining. So there are 3 standards set for ozone, for 8-hour average ozone. You can see them there. Below there are now 3 standards set for PM 2.5. And you can see the various concentration levels there. Once EPA sets these standards, they designate non-attainment areas, meaning areas that need to then put together an attainment plan and a strategy to reduce emissions and get air quality to meet these standards. EPA puts out the planning requirements for each standard, and then they also act on those attainment plans that come to them, submitted by the district or by different states. And each attainment plan, or the SIP, the state implementation plan, they all build on each other. So we've done past plans for all of these standards. Each one builds on the one before, and they keep getting more and more emissions reductions to continue to improve air quality throughout the valley. And meeting these standards is critical to improve air quality and public health for the region. And based on the work that we've been doing to implement the strategies within all of our adopted plans, air quality is improving, and the governing board takes action to approve these plans. They take action to approve different rules and regulations to reduce those emissions to improve air quality. As an example, stationary source ozone and PM forming NOx emissions. NOx is a key pollutant for both the formation of ozone and PM particulate matter, we've reduced those emissions from stationary sources by over 90% over the years. CARB also adopts numerous mobile source emissions controls that's under their jurisdiction, and they've done that for a number of decades, and they continue to do that. And combined with what we do and what CARB does, this really is the nation's toughest emissions control program out there. To complement that, we also have a strong incentive program where between both public and private investment, about $4.5 billion have been invested in clean technologies. And through all of this, we continue to reduce emissions and make progress in reducing our air quality. So this chart here, which is also on the wall in our boardrooms here, just shows how much progress we've made in reducing NOx, and this is that key pollutant for both ozone and PM 2.5. Looking back in 1980 versus where we are now, we've seen a huge change in emissions in NOx, where overall we've reduced this by over 75%. And then, like I mentioned before, looking at stationary source specifically, that's that dark blue bar, that's been reduced by about 93% over this period. Looking at what that has done for PM 2.5 specifically, this is showing the progress we've made in reducing PM 2.5 across the valley. So looking back in time, there's a couple of charts here. One on the left is for a 24-hour average value for PM 2.5. This happens more during the winter season when we have our peak values. Looking back in 2003, about 20 years ago, you can see a lot of areas of orange and red that had much higher values. You progress forward in time, and you can see that continuing to improve across the valley, and then you see a projection of where we're planning to go by 2024. Then on the right-hand side, this is an annual average, so concentrations averaged over the entire year. You can see back 20 years ago, we had much higher values. You can see those darker red, purple areas. You can see that progressively changing to where we are now, which is much better from where we used to be. Just an update on where we are with some different standards for PM and for ozone. We are in attainment right now of federal PM10 standard, the 1-hour ozone standard, and the 24-hour average portion of the 1997 PM 2.5 standard, and EPA has issued what's called a clean data finding for the standards, that we've attained those. We're also getting very close in attaining a couple of other standards, one of them being the 1997 8-hour ozone standard. That's the initial 8-hour ozone standard that EPA put out in 97, set at 84 parts per billion. Then also the 1997 annual PM 2.5 standard at 15 micrograms. We're getting really close. We're knocking on the door of those standards. We're conducting our analysis with CARB on these that also include exceptional event documentation. Wildfire emissions can impact our data, and so we're looking at that very closely with CARB and EPA. Regarding the 97 annual PM 2.5 standard, wanted to note here that EPA also has in front of them a SIP revision for that standard specifically that they're currently reviewing. Once we come into attainment of these different standards, we then do what's called a maintenance plan that shows how we're going to demonstrate that we'll maintain attainment of that air quality. We'll continue to stay below that standard going forward. A few notes here on the latest plan that we need to put together. This is for the 2012 PM 2.5 standard. So the standard for this is set at 12 micrograms per meter cubed on an annual average. So we initially had a plan put together for this as a part of our 2018 PM 2.5 plan. EPA proposed approval of this plan for that standard back in December 2021. EPA then reversed that proposed approval in October 22 and proposed a disapproval for a variety of reasons. So later in that month in October, us and CARB withdrew that plan. And I wanted to note here that that plan was actually submitted very early. The real deadline for that plan to submit was the end of 2023. So we did submit it early. EPA ended up proposing to disapprove that. So we have withdrawn that plan with CARB, and we were now working on a number of elements based on EPA's comments, making sure that we do all this work to address any of their concerns and comments. And that plan is due by the end of 2023. So this is an active plan that we are working through right now with CARB. And we do need some specific guidance from EPA to assist us with all of these planning issues. Based on EPA's recent proposal, with them changing direction, different court rulings on contingency and other issues, there's a lot of new guidance that needs to come out from EPA on how to address a couple of really key issues. One of them being Title VI of the Civil Rights Act. This was mentioned in the October 2022 proposed plan disapproval that EPA came out with. EPA is working on guidance for this, and this will be national guidance for all states and air districts to follow to satisfy this. So we're waiting for that guidance. That'll be, then we'll work that into our 2023 PM 2.5 plan. contingency measures is also another key area that we need guidance from EPA on it. And these measures are meant to be triggered only if you don't attain the standard by the deadline. If you miss the attainment date, there's something that comes into effect immediately to get more emissions reductions to help you move forward even further to get more reductions and improve air quality to meet that standard. There are a lot of restrictions with contingency that make it very difficult to find different measures that work. So we are working through this right now with CARB and EPA to satisfy this, and EPA should be coming out with guidance soon to really help clarify how we can meet this new requirement. Like I mentioned, we're working on this. We're hoping to come through with a package this spring in 2023 for both us here at the district and CARB to consider, and then that'll be submitted to EPA for their review. And that'll help take care of various issues going on with it. We plan to include also in there a scarcity analysis where there really aren't a whole lot of options that really fit within the constraints of contingency. So we're doing that analysis now. And like I mentioned, EPA guidance is really critical to help us make sure that what we're doing is going to meet these new requirements, that's approvable by EPA, and we can work these contingency elements into our future planning efforts. We're also requesting that EPA also look closely at what can they do from a federal perspective, instead of just us looking at what we can do, what CARB can do from the state perspective, what can EPA do from the federal mobile source emissions perspective to get more emissions reductions as a contingency. So we are pressing them on that too, for them to think of some different options. And this is really becoming a bigger issue. This is showing, the chart at the bottom here is showing a comparison between mobile source emissions that are controlled by the federal government versus the state. And so that blue line is the state NOx emissions going down over time. They have a new state sub-strategy. They're expecting to get big reductions in NOx in the coming years from different state sources that are mobile. The yellowish orange line there, that is the amount of NOx emissions from the federal perspective. And you can see we're now at that point where there's a crossover, where emissions in the state of California from federal sources are now more than the state. And going forward, that diverges even more and more, where it's going to become even more and more important that EPA take action to reduce those emissions there. Just a few points too. So I talked about some of the existing PM standards. EPA also regularly goes through a process to review those standards to see if any updates need to be made. They look closely at the most recent health research to make sure that the standard is adequate, and if not, then they'll lower that standard in a proposal. And they are prohibited from considering implementation costs. It's really just focused on health research. And if you've been following this, you probably noticed that EPA did actually recently propose a new PM 2.5 standard for the annual standard specifically. Like I mentioned, the plan we're working on now addresses the 12 microgram annual standard. So what they're proposing here is lowering that annual average to 9 to 10 micrograms, somewhere in that range. It's not final yet. It's out for public comment, and we expect them to finalize that probably in 2024. And that'll set a whole new planning timeline to put together a plan for that new standard. They are also looking at the 8-hour ozone standard. Like I mentioned, there are 3 8-hour ozone standards that are in place. They're also looking at that to see if that should be updated based on the latest health science. So we're tracking that closely. So if that happens, there would then be 4 ozone standards in addition to 4 PM 2.5 standards that we are planning for and working through. Like I mentioned, once these new standards are set, then that puts a requirement on local districts and states to put together what's called the state implementation plan to meet all our requirements. And I did want to mention here that meeting these new standards continues to be more and more challenging as we've gotten so many emissions reductions. Like you can see on the chart over here, we've done so much work to improve air quality. Getting more and more emissions reduction is becoming more and more difficult, especially for PM 2.5. The planning timelines that are included there are much shorter. For ozone, you get a lot more time. You can have 15 to 20 years to attain those ozone standards. For PM 2.5, you can have pretty much six years to attain a standard. And getting those further emissions reductions and planning for PM 2.5 can be just as challenging as ozone. So it's really hard to meet all these requirements. And we also press EPA regularly that we need timely action from them. When we give them planning documents, different rules and regulations, we really need them to work quickly to review that and approve that, because of disapproval and inaction issues can cause uncertainty, inefficiencies, and confusion. And under current law, local jurisdictions are subject to federal sanctions even through failure to attain standards that may be due to emission sources coming from the federal side. Like I mentioned before, there could be permitting barriers for new and expanding business, loss of federal highway funds, federal takeover of what we do here, and loss of local control, non-attainment penalties. So there's a lot of issues that can come up without EPA timely action on these things. And so we always press the EPA to review our submitted plans to take action, and we can put those strategies into place. That's it for my overview, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Where do we start? Even 97 hasn't been done. And they changed it again. They are proposing to change from 9 to 10 versus 12, and et cetera, et cetera. Let me open it up to the Fresno CAC board members. Any comments to John? He is the messenger. It is EPA. It is not the district that is doing these things. It's EPA and ARB. So any comments of John in the central office, please?
I just have a clarification. On page 6, and you mentioned the attainment of the 1997 8-hour standard and the 2.5 p.m. standard. And so are the wildfires, are they accounted in those, in the progress made or not?
Yeah, so we have accounted for that. Yeah, thanks for asking that. Wildfire emissions can certainly directly impact PM 2.5 concentrations, and wildfire emissions can include NOx and VOC, which can impact ozone. And so based on the progress we are making without those wildfire impacts, we're right on the doorstep of attaining those two standards. Yes, thank you.
Ms. Brown, what is in that discussion, are you saying that we need to focus with language in our SIP with forest fires?
I think,
because it's not really mentioned, John, is it? That forest fires are not in the statements. EPA doesn't acknowledge them. And I know the governor's throwing some money at it, but that is an issue. And wildfires caused by humans, or when Mother Nature gets upset with us. But is Region 9 giving us that ability to use that in the SIP that was denied in 22? Wildfires, are they giving us the credit, I guess, the acknowledgement? And because
yeah, I definitely, if we want to keep going along that train of thought, I mean, did this progress and these really impressive graphs, did we attain all that while also accounting and including for the wildfire pollution that has been trapped in our basin?
Yeah, just to comment on that a little bit. So there's a process called the exceptional events process, which is helpful. EPA does allow this, where if you have wind events, wildfires, other issues that affect your data, you can go through a documentation process to show what impact that was. And if EPA approves of that documentation, you can not use that data in your calculation methodology to see if you've attained those standards. And so we always track that very closely when we look at our trends with how close we're getting to these standards. And like I mentioned, we're doing a lot of that work right now to show that without those impacts, we are very close to attaining those 1997 standards. So we do a lot of work with EPA on that. And to comment on your point, Manuel, I think this will become an even bigger issue with them lowering the annual standard down to 9 to 10. It's not just going to be an issue for the San Joaquin Valley. This is going to become a planning issue for many parts of California, across the United States, where they could be impacted by fire as well. And it's those wildfires that's pushing them just over the standard. So this kind of work and issue is going to become much more prominent nationally than just a California thing.
Great. Thank you. Anybody? Okay, let's go to the north. CAC members, any questions for John on the 2.5 plan?
Yeah, can you hear me, Manuel? Can you see
Yes,
me, Manuel?
please.
It's
Yes,
Ned Leva.
please.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, because you should realize here, the volume is very low and I'm missing some of the comments that are being made. But in any event, my observation, first off, is that most of the readings that I see in our valley have been quite good. We seem to be hitting the 12 microgram per meter cubed standard, and that's for 2012. And so when we get these very alarming documents like this September 28th announcement that the EPA is going to reject our SIP based on ammonia precursors and things of this sort, I'm wondering in my own mind, gee, it looks like we've made such significant progress and we've obtained in most cases the 2012 standards. So what's the point? That's number one. Maybe John, maybe there's a bigger story here. And then, of course, there was the concern about the federal court case. The federal court case had to do with the 2006 standards. That federal court case said everything was kosher, to use a technical term of art, except for some funding measure. And I don't understand why we couldn't take some solace from that court case and say, okay, the SIP that we had was perfectly fine, except we have to address some funding issues. So those, there's a larger story here. I'll end with the last one, the proposed reduction from 12 micrograms down to 9 or 10 micrograms. I must tell you, I do not see any double-blind randomized studies that supports a significant palpable health benefit by having 2 micrograms per meter cubed. So those are my comments and my questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Can you hear me now? Are you? Okay. Yeah, please scream or yell or throw something at me if the voice levels aren't there. Kelly, no. You're in the central office. You could hear me. Okay. Any other CAC members in the north comment?
I
Yes.
have one. If we're doing the exception for the wildfires, can we do exception for the trucks that we cannot control that are outside of California and put that as part of our standard? I mean, it's stupid if we can do a wildfire, but we can't do outside. Yeah, or China. Anyway, that was a serious question.
Any comment, John? Or
Yeah, that's a good question, Mr. O'Brien. There are a lot of different ideas of what EPA should consider as well as exceptional event. They have a defined list of different things that they currently consider, and they get lots of recommendations on what else should be considered. So that is something that could be considered, but EPA would likely say that that's an emission source that is controllable. Like they could do something to control emissions more from those sorts of activities, but other things like wildfires, windblown dust, meteorological events that can't really be controlled by people are the types of categories that really fit better in the category of exceptional events according to EPA definitions. But yeah, thank you for that comment.
Okay, any other board member in the north? All right, let me go to the south, board members. Mr. Clark. We're okay? All right. Contingency plans. They're supposed to have the definition in a couple of weeks of what that means and what do you use. I understand that the contingency is for people not to leave their house and stay home. That's one of them I've heard through rumors. Now this is rumors. But is that true, John? They're going to come out with a definition for contingencies because we've got the toughest rules. I mean, the chart shows it.
Yeah, so EPA should be coming out with national guidance soon on contingency we've heard sometime this month in February, and this will apply to nationally. It's not just us, like states and air districts across the nation are gonna have to use this new guidance to build contingencies into their implementation plans and strategies. And so that should be forthcoming. It'll have some definitions in there on the emissions reductions you're supposed to achieve from a contingency, what would qualify, and some different other criteria. So once that comes out, that'll be helpful for us to finalize our approach and any arguments we need to make on what's possible, what's not possible. So that should be coming soon.
Great, and I'd like to make sure we have time enough for the members of this committee to really discuss that, so that we'll allow some time. And I know we're getting close to the 12, so. Any comments from the public in the north?
No comments no public comments in the north. Sorry about that.
How about the south?
No public comment in the south?
Great, thank you. How about here central?
No public comment in the Fresno office.
Okay, great, all right. John, thank you very, very much. All right, let's go to item number 12, the update on the NSR rule. Brian?
Yeah, good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. My name is Brian Clements. I'm the Permit Services Director, and I'll give you a brief update on the rule amendment process for our Rule 2201, which is our stationary source, new and modified stationary source review rule, and Rule 2301, emission reduction credits, or ERCs. Just a quick history and background on this. These rules apply to industry or our stationary sources of air pollution that we issue permits to for their potential emissions, and the NSR rule is the mechanism that we use to minimize industry expansions. It's where we get such things as best available control technology or backed offsetting requirements, public notice, and other health-based air quality analysis and other permitting limits. The ERC program accompanies the NSR rule, where certain actual emission reduction scenarios can be banked as ERCs and then used as to satisfy offsetting requirements through NSR. So how we got to these rule amendments, recently the ARB has been looking at our ERC program. They came out with a report a few years ago, commented on our program. The EPA's been analyzing our Rule 2201 as well, and they recently took action on that and provided comments. So that led us to this rule amendment process, which began in last year. And I'll talk about the schedule in a minute, but just at a high level, what we're doing with these rules, I'll summarize a couple of the major components. One is to address the offsetting equivalency component of the rule compared to federal requirements by codifying what we've been doing the last few years, our current practice of offsetting major sources, which make up a small percentage of the actual number of facilities that we have in the district. But currently we have a dual path approach for offsetting for major sources. One path is for NOx and VOCs, and the other path will be for PM10, PM2.5, SOx, and CO. So for NOx and VOCs, we're following federal requirements through our current permitting process, which come in the form of the amount of offsets required, and that those offsets in the form of ERCs need to be surplus of all of applicable rules and regulations at the time of the permitting project. So with this rulemaking, we'll be codifying and adopting the full federal offsetting requirements for NOx and VOCs. For the other pollutants, we'll maintain our equivalency program. Since the district's program for requiring offsets for these pollutants is more stringent. But we are proposing to replace or accompany our annual equivalency report for these pollutants with a project by project or permit level demonstration, so that we demonstrate we're in continuous equivalency at all times. We also intend to clarify a whole host of other provisions recently identified by EPA to address the existing federal regulations. So we'll incorporate those changes. And all these items will be addressed and discussed in the staff report that we plan to release in the near future here with our workshop being next week. The other rule that we're modifying two other rules. The 2301, as mentioned, it will cover a few items. One thing we're doing is clarifying the definition of shutdown. This is related to banking emission reduction credits, so that the definition better matches our long-standing, decades-old policy and implementation on that. So it's more of a clarification. We'll be discontinuing the banking of GHG emissions just based on historic interest in that, which has been very minimal, and where there are other more established programs for that. And then we'll add some other administrative requirements related to unbanked shutdown of emissions that we can use potentially in equivalency situations. And then lastly, we'll be amending Rule 1020, which is our definitions rule. To clarify a few things, we plan to add a definition for PM 2.5, actually move that definition from Rule 2201, so that the definitions of these pollutants are all in the same place. It's mostly for clarity. So as mentioned, we began a public process to amend these rules last year. We hosted a public scoping meeting in April of last year, and then we've had a couple workshops since then, one in June, one in October. There's a workshop scheduled next week on February 15th. We'll be presenting our draft amendments and continue to solicit public comment. And then we plan to make a final draft and rules available for a governing board hearing sometime in the second quarter of this year. So with that, I'll turn it back over to the chair for any questions or comments.
Thank you very much. Any comments from the CAC members here in the central office? Okay, let's go to the north. Any comments in the north? If you can still hear us, I'm hoping. Okay, seeing none, let's go to the south. Any comments? Any comments from the south, Mr. Clark or anybody?
I'm still gonna meet with some of the staff for clarification, and that's strictly oil stuff, so I'll talk about that at a later time.
Perfect. Thank you, Mr. Clark. All right, let's go to the public in the south. Any comments?
No public comment in the south.
Okay, let's go to the north. Any public comments?
No public comment in the north.
Great. Let's bring it back here to the central. Any public comment?
No public comment in central.
John, thank you very much. Not John, Mr. Clemens, Brian. Appreciate your work, and let's stay tuned. Thank you. All right, let's go to item number 13, 617. Okay.
Hello, good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. My name is Jessica Olson. I'm the Director of Community Strategies and Resources here at the district, and my team oversees AB 617 implementation, among other community-driven efforts. And so I'll just provide a brief update. It's been a little bit since I've spoken with you all, so I do have a couple of major things that have happened. Of course, we continue to meet with all 4 community steering committees, and those are in the communities of South Central Fresno, Shafter, Arvin, Lamont, and Stockton. The last I spoke with you, we were about to take the district-adopted SERP, or Community Emissions Reduction Program, to CARB's board. Their board unanimously, and I can even say enthusiastically, approved that SERP. And we've moved forward really since district adoption, but certainly since CARB approval with that steering committee. And we've had many successful meetings since then, and we continue to have really very productive collaborative pesticide subcommittee meetings where we have all of the different agency partners and community members all sit around the table and talk in detail about their highest priority measure, which is kind of all of the agreed upon various SERP commitments regarding pesticides.
In the South Central Fresno, Shafter, and Stockton communities, which have had adopted SERPs in place for a number of years now, we've continued to meet monthly and have even more frequent subcommittee meetings. Just a couple of quick updates there. During the November Governing Board study session, we took an annual report for each one of those communities to our board as an update on progress toward implementing all of the SERP measures. And so I'm happy to point you all to kind of where that lives. It not only on our community website, but also, of course, in the board package in November if you're interested. And then, of course, per AB 617 guidance that was then forwarded to CARB, and they will actually talk a little bit about annual reports across the state at a board meeting this month. And then finally, I'll just update you that just last month, the district governing board approved shifting some funding in the Shafter SERP. That was sort of agreed upon and supported by the CSC and district staff and other agency partners to fund vegetative barriers, a really high priority measure to plant trees and other vegetation to block pollution and protect community members in that area. So that's just some of the most recent things that we've been up to. I'm going to pass it now to Brian Moore from CARB to provide CARB's update. I might take a second to promote him to panelist.
Mr. Chair, can we ask
has left the meeting.
can we ask a couple of questions before she passes it on?
Yes, please.
Sure.
Yeah, let's go ahead and then we'll go back to CARB.
Okay,
Let's
absolutely.
deal with the San Joaquin Valley with the board first. Please,
All right.
go ahead.
Could you just clarify for me? I mean, I've been here a year, first time I've been here. Clarify for me why those 4 communities were chosen.
Absolutely.
And what the program is.
Yes, no, absolutely.
And
And I'm sorry, I'm happy.
The acronym that you're making reference to, what that stands for.
Yes, so I think I mentioned the Community Emissions Reduction Program, and then I said SERP, and so I'll just make sure to spell that out. And I'm happy actually next meeting to maybe make it more of a presentation style so folks have something visual to follow along with, and that's just a good reminder that there are some new folks here, and especially at this in-person meeting. So yes, just to go back really briefly, after the 2018 passage of Assembly Bill 617, CARB, or the California Air Resources Board, is required every year to consider selection of a particular community that is overburdened or disadvantaged or disproportionately affected by air pollution, either from local or regional sources. And that sort of, that process is done through the air districts. So what has happened annually since 2018 is that air districts across the state have come together and with community members and honestly, each air district using sort of their own set of criteria. Here at the district using CalEnviroscreen or the Office of Environmental Health Hazard Assessments tool where they take socioeconomic and pollution burden factors into account to rank census tracts across the state, taking those rankings and trying to identify the communities in most need, and then taking those communities as sort of nominations to our governing board that then get forwarded on to CARB for selection. So in the first year, that process resulted in South Central Fresno and Shafter being selected. The second time we did it, that resulted in Stockton being selected. And the most recent time that the district put forth an official nomination, Arvin Lamont was selected. Does that help answer? And I'm happy, Mr. Chair, next time to have a little bit more of a presentation if that helps.
Yeah, if you can send out a little bit of the history.
Yeah,
ahead
absolutely.
of time, even to send it to all the new members as well.
Okay.
And then we can take a little time next time and a little bit more of the specific areas that we're discussing. Anybody else? Let me go to the north. Any CAC members' comments? All right, let's go to the south. Any CAC comments there?
Through the chair, Les Clark has left the meeting.
Okay, great, thank you. Okay, we'll hold off for the public until after the ARB presentation. Okay, so let's go to the ARB presentation.
Great.
Brian, is that?
Hi, yeah, thanks everyone. My name is Brian Moore, and I'm one of the managers in the Office of Community Air Protection that works with Jessica and Air District staff on AB 617 implementation. And Jessica did a great job of summarizing a very nuanced program with a lot of moving parts. So that was awesome. I just have 3 Main updates that I think may interest this group. The first is we are doing our annual community selection, which was just discussed by Jessica this February 23rd. So CARB staff is recommending 2 communities, Bayview, Hunters Point in the Bay Area, as well as 3 kind of smaller communities that make up 1 community in Imperial Valley. So that's the Westmoreland, Brawlin, and Calipatria. They're kind of calling that the phase 1 Imperial communities. So those are the 2 communities that this year CARB staff will be recommending to our board to consider. And that is on February 23rd. And I can pass on some background information on the selection process made to Jessica to distribute to the whole committee on that topic. The second thing we're doing, a big push, is we're updating our guidance document, which we call our program blueprint. So this is the guidance document that CARB has put together with input from air districts and a lot of stakeholders that kind of takes that 6 or 7 page bill, AB 617, and kind of outlines how to implement it. We are on our big 5-year cycle of revising that document, and we will be releasing a draft of that in late March of this year. And then we'll have a pretty long comment period. And then the final draft will be considered by our board in September 2023. And I also have a link to that process as well I can share. And the final update I had that I think you'll be interested in is that CARB received an US EPA Enhanced Air Quality Monitoring Grant. And this will be run by our Monitoring and Laboratory Division at CARB. And one of the focuses is pesticide monitoring in the Lavinia community in the Central Valley. It was supported by the Central California Asthma Collaborative, as well as the Central California Environmental Justice Network and Leadership Council. So 3 community-based organizations that work in the Valley. And I can also share information on that project. We're just in the phase of designing the project plan, and we'll definitely share it with the Air District, anyone who's interested, once our Monitoring and Laboratory Division has put together that draft. So yeah, other than those 3 things, that is all I have, and I'm more than welcome to take any questions. Thanks.
Okay, great. Thank you, Brian, very much. Let me bring it here to any questions, please. Board member.
So I had a question. What was the name of the city you said, or the name of the area that the last comment? Lavinia
Sure.
or something?
Oh yeah, so the 2 communities that we are nominating, one's Bayview, Hunters Point, which is like South San Francisco.
Sorry, Brian, I can help clarify. Lavinia in Madera County.
Oh, got it. Yeah, Lavinia. So yeah, it's unincorporated area, really right in the Central Valley, I guess, kind of, is it Madera County, right? Is that what you said, Jessica?
Madera, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Okay, any other comments, Mr. Williams?
So, yes, thank you. So you've got a grant to put pesticide monitoring in place. Who does what with the results from the monitoring?
CARB will be collecting that data for the monitoring.
And then what will they do with it?
Well, the first step will be posting it publicly so everyone can check it out after there's been some quality control done on it. And it will probably direct any future mitigation steps in that area. They aren't going to be regulatory monitors in any sense, but it may help design some ways to reduce exposure.
So would the information then be forwarded to, I'm sorry to have to do this back and forth instead of, just making a comment and getting an answer, but this is kind of an important subject to a lot of people. Will that information then, just the data and the results from your monitoring, would it be sent then to the county that the work's being done in? Would it be sent to DPR? Do you have plans to have some other department in ARB do some sort of legal action of any kind or regulatory action of any kind with that information? How do you plan to use this at the end of the day? Where's it going to be used for good or for bad or whatever?
So we will definitely be working with DPR. A lot of DPR's monitoring is actually contracted to CARB. So we actually do a lot of the air monitoring of pesticides. There's no plan. So for any type of this being a regulatory or enforcement directed monitoring, it's basically just information finding in that area, because there hasn't been much pesticides monitoring within Lavinia. And it's a community that sits right in the middle of a lot of almonds and stuff like that. So this is a first step, and I can definitely share the project plan once it's developed by our monitoring laboratory division. But this is
And then
not
my
being
last
performed by
question-
oh, go ahead.
I was gonna say, my last question had to do with that. You answered my question. I think other people
Oh.
might have questions, want more. How does this tie in with the pesticide committees or subcommittees that you were talking about putting together?
The pesticide subcommittee is meeting in Arvin, Lamont. So just a different community. That's all done through partnership with the Kern County Ag Commissioner, as well as DPR and CARB and the district. So pretty separate actions there.
But that's a subcommittee of.
That's a subcommittee of the Community Steering Committee in Arvin, Lamont, the community
Okay,
selected for
put
AB
together under
617.
AB 617.
Yes.
And so what happens, what do they do? Are they just making recommendations? Are they looking at the monitoring that's being done by ARB just to see what's going on, and then
So
they can have input?
When before we adopted the SERP, we worked with DPR, the Ag Commissioner, and CARB to put together a set of measures that each one of them independently and then collaboratively agreed upon to address some of the community concerns. So there's a variety, and I'm happy to, in forwarding a bunch of other information, to forward just that one measure, because there's a variety of things on there, including just education. A lot of it is just about outreach. Some components do have to do with monitoring, and that's something that we're actually talking about in future committee meetings, but I'm happy to just forward all of that information on to you.
We were so focused on greenhouse gas and things like that in those days, and so the whole pesticide thing was sort of just kind of caught a lot of people by surprise here in the last couple of months. Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah. Let me go to the north. Any comments for Brian from the CAC members? Okay, hearing none. All right, let me go to the south. Mr. Clark has left. There's no other. Let me go to any public comment in the south. To Brian.
No
Okay,
other public comment in the south.
Okay, let's go to the north. Any public comment?
No public comment in the north.
Let's bring it back here to the central. Any public comment?
No public comment in central.
Great. Brian, I would hope that in your committee of ARB, the research division arm sometimes doesn't know what the left side's doing. And especially on the ag side of research, we've had that discussion heavily. I would definitely want to make sure that in Madera County, that you definitely have included the agriculture advisor, commissioner, that he must be contacted, not gone around him on pesticides, on anything. And I think that's very important. And secondly, CDFA, California Food and Agriculture, needs to definitely also be involved, not just ARB and not just some environmental group, which is fine, but also the arm that is out there with the jobs that that community gets from agriculture. If it wasn't for those farmers, there wouldn't be any community at all. But there again, we want the workers and the families to be safe, air quality wise, health wise, and everything. That's number one in our industry. So appreciate it very much. Thank you.
No, taken. Thank you.
Okay, let's go to item number 14, which
Good morning. Wait, no. Good afternoon in the essence of
yes,
time.
Jamie Holt, number 2,
Thank you, Manuel. I'm Heather Hanks. I'm in
Yes,
with the
Heather,
Outreach and Communications
go
team.
for it.
I'm in for Jamie Holt.
Yes.
I'm the program manager for that team. I have 3 things to leave you with today in the essence of time. 1, we missed you last month, so it is a new year and we have a new amazing calendar full of artwork from kids all over the valley, every community represented. So free, there's some on the table, take one. Secondly, part of the work that Jess was talking about, the specific work we're doing in those AB 617 communities, we have an upcoming fireplace show and tell. We just had one in Shafter. This one's going to be in Stockton. It's on February 23rd, and I have a flyer here. But the awesome part of it is our chance to get into a restaurant, invite the public in, and talk to them about changing out their fireplace, answer their questions. No pressure. Retailers there, get the information straight from us and how you do it. Takes the pressure off, and I think we'll get some conversions that way. And of course, next week, look for us at the Ag Expo. Lots and lots of conversations to be had next week. So that's all.
Thank you. Any questions of this young lady? In the north, CAC members, any questions of Heather? Okay, let's stay in the north for the public. Any questions for Heather? Let's go to the south, public comment.
No public
Heather?
comment in the south.
Okay, let's bring it here to the central. Any public comment?
No public comment in the central.
Heather, thank you very, very much. Your entire team
My pleasure.
is incredible. You folks do a great job in that department, and your coloring book is famous. Is famous, and the kids and the folks that have done those things, and you folks presenting some awards at the last study session was fantastic. And again, thank you very much. Okay, any other comment? Okay, great. Let's go to item 14, not 15, excuse me. CAC members, any comments from CAC members here in the Central?
I do, Mr.
Please.
Chair. First of all, I want to echo, on behalf of the city of Tulare, we want to invite everybody to World Ag Expo. Everything's gearing up, and we have a second city that's being established there. And spend your money in Tulare. That helps us, to be quite frank with you. Next, just for edification, we have staff here. I see 6 that I assume is staff. It's the first time I've been here since I've been appointed. It'd be helpful to have staff introduce themselves in their capacity prior to us leaving. So I would ask that.
All right, very good. Any other member comments? Okay, why don't we stay right here right now, and let's just start off next to the podium. Let's please introduce yourself.
Anyway, my name is Shanika Dixon. I'm the Director of Personnel here.
Fantastic.
Very nice to meet you all.
I'm Tammy Harrell. I'm the Executive Assistant here.
Super.
Executive Assistant.
Yes.
Yes. My name is Stephanie, and I'm an Operations Support Supervisor.
Okay, great.
Good morning. My name is Katrina Rojas. I am serving as the interim deputy clerk to the board.
Super. Thank you. Young man.
Yeah, my name is Brandon Sweeboom. I work in the IT department, so I kind of help facilitate the meetings here with the system. Alex Goldbuck, I'm a Network Systems Analyst here, also helping with the meetings.
Okay, we heard from that, but go ahead, please. And the famous,
I'm Heather Hines, Outreach and Communications.
fantastic,
Couples and Director of Community Strategy.
great.
I'm Ryan Hayashi. I'm one of the deputy air control officers.
And young man?
I'm Morgan Lambert. I'm also one of the deputy air pollution control officers.
Great. And in the north, who do we have there?
This is Kathy Beninati, Office Services Manager here in the north.
Okay, any other person in the north that we're missing? I don't hear,
No, it's
okay.
just me.
Okay. Thank you for everything you do in the north. Let's go to the south. Any, the staff in the south?
Yes, hi, I'm Arlene Hill, Office Services Manager for Bakersfield.
Okay, great. The only person there? Well, not
Yes,
the only
sir.
person there, but.
Only person here today, yes.
Yes, today, but the office has got a lot of people in it, so.
Yes,
great.
we're a huge, happy group.
Okay, great. Any comments from board members in the north?
Hi, my name is Amy Lopes, and I am on the Citizen Advisory Council. And I did want to make a comment with regards to action number 10 or item number 10. Morgan Lambert, thank you very much for explaining what the Citizen Advisory Committee entails and our roles and responsibilities. I've been on this now for 6 months. And this is very, very helpful to me. With regards to what Les Clark said, it is our job to spread the word or spread the gospel of air pollution control. And, I think it would be very helpful if we all could, not today, for sake of time, but at least, say how we communicate that our information that we learn here and share with the communities, because I think I could learn from all of you, and you don't know what I do. And I share this information a lot. I'm on other various committees that I could actually help you guys as well. So I think that's a good opportunity for us. And is it okay? I don't know. I don't know what I can share and what I can't share, but can I share this with our Central Valley Chemical Safety Day organization? The major reductions in pollution. We had the NOx emissions folks from the San Joaquin Valley Air Pollution District come and speak at our event in November, and it was really well received. So I'd like to share this.
Yeah, that's a public document. You can share it. Anything that's shared here is shareable publicly.
Thank you.
Okay, great. Any other person in the north? I'm going to not skip over that item. I'm coming back to your item. Excellent. Anybody else in the north? Okay. In the south? I think he's gone. Gone. Okay, back here. Absolutely. Let's dedicate 1 hour, because we all, especially the chair, talks too much. I will have my two persons on the left muzzle me. But I think 1 hour is a great recommendation of how you folks get out there and what you do, because we can pick up stuff from each other. I think it's a great recommendation. So let's take that up in the March CAC meeting. We will do that. So Morgan and your team have got to listen to whatever we're going to say. And I'm thinking an hour will be sufficient. So again, I also want to thank another person, Mr. Lieberman. I want to thank you for all the work you did in recruiting folks up north. This is the best recruitment process we've ever had for the CAC to have as many members. And I want to thank you all. But Mr. Lieberman, I want to thank you especially because you did reach out and you asked questions and for your alternate and all those things. So again, everybody, I think this is the end, right? This is it. We will make sure you get the information you need, clean up the minutes like we said. And again, I want to thank you all. Kelly, you have something?
Yeah, you're going to governing meeting, right?
Yes. Oh, yes.
Moving down the agenda.
Yes, sorry, Kelly. Sorry. Okay. Yes, I will go to the thing. Again, I want to thank all of you very, very much for attendance and your input and being a part of that. I want to thank the staff, the entire staff, and communications. If we'll make sure that the Bakersfield office for where the board is, communications, they could hear us, that would be great. And you may want to check the Bakersfield out one too, just for precautions, okay? Again, Morgan, thank you, and everybody. Ms. Famous, thank you very much for all the work you guys do with the kids, okay? You're adjourned.